ocean's tides. We call on the winds, the mountains rise. By the sacred rules we stand as one, bidding that our work begun. Mighty war, with hammer in hand, strike down the foe, protect this land. Odin, All-Father, seeker of wisdom, guide our souls to the sacred rhythm. Frigg, queen of the hearth and home, with love and grace make us whole. Turn the trust with your iron might, guide us through the darkened night. Hell, the mistress of life and death, show us the path with every breath. Freya, goddess of love and war, we honor you now and forevermore. Feru, Urus, Tulisas, we call the runes, we seek your cause. Ansus, the Rhino, Canas, we say, guide our path, light our way. Lacus, Hagalas, northeast we sing, our spirits rise on the winds of spring. It's our Jera Perth, for we trust in the runes, in the laws we must.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Greyhorn Pagans podcast. If the sweater looks familiar, if the background looks familiar, that is because I am recording back to back. It is a busy weekend, but I love doing nothing more than this. My guest for this time is Miss Heidi Luv from Unfiltered Rise podcast, and we are going to talk about some weird things, but that I find highly interesting and that I have definitely looked into before. So yeah, Heidi, thank you very much for coming on. And for those who may not be familiar with your work just yet, first of all, you should be. Second of all, introduce yourself. What do you do? What are you about?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love coming on and talking about my weird mind, because this is not conversations you can just talk to about like with your neighbor, right?
Unfortunately.
They'll be like, oh my gosh, this lady. Oh. And some family members even, of course. So I do run the Unfiltered Rise podcast. It started with a quick guest appearance, and next thing I knew, I had my own show, and it's almost been 2 years now, and I just love podcasting. And these are things that I find just fascinating, right? Like it's just kind of wherever your mind goes. What a fun time we live in, that we can research things and share it with other people. And since I'm a researcher by nature, it was simple for me. In my regular life, I am a mom. I have 6 kids. Most are grown now, but some are not. We have grandchildren and all of that. So we're busy that way. And I am a registered nurse as well. So
the Greyhorn Pagans podcast is proudly sponsored by Shop Reclaim Repurpose and their Hnefatafel set. That is Viking chess, a centuries-old 2-player strategy game that is easy to learn but rich with complexity. The defending player aims to escape the corner with their king, while the attacking player aims to capture the king. Hnefatafel is about outwitting your opponent and making strategic decisions based on the board's ever-changing conditions. This portable version of Hnefatafel, or Tafel for short, is perfect for history buffs, Viking enthusiasts, or anyone looking for a unique and challenging board game that can be taken on the go. Perfect for the upcoming holidays, of course. And with my code seen on screen now, which will also be in the description box down below, of course, you can get 10% off your purchase on one or more, of course, Tafel sets. Simply go to his website, shopreclaimrepurpose.etsy.com. Use coupon SteinfoxTafel for 10% off your entire purchase. Again, coupon code SteinfoxTafel, or go to the link shown on screen for 10% off. Thank you so much for Shop Reclaim Repurpose for sponsoring us. It means the world. Now let's get back into the show, shall we?
Awesome. That's wow, six kids.
I know. Yeah, Mormons,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. It's yeah. No, that's true.
Yes.
Big
I'm not one
big
anymore.
family.
Yeah.
No, that's a whole other story.
rabbit.
We'll get to some other time.
Another time. Yes, because
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Actually, like I say, you've got 1 degree of separation on any conspiracy, just add Mormons. Like 1 drop of water, yep, just add the Mormons because they're always there and I don't know why they are. But
I have noticed that I listened to you on a
thank you.
on a different show the other day. I don't remember the show, and it was all like Mormons behind the scenes,
Mormons,
running
yep.
everything, doing everything Mormons, and
Yes.
I know a bit about them. I know a bit of them, just because I have come to know several people in Utah. Can't spell Utah without Mormon.
It's so true. Yeah, it's true though. Yeah.
And it's like, well, why Mormons? What did they have to do with it? And I know Nick from Occult Rejects.
He loves the Mormons.
Mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
He's done a lot
Shout out,
about the
Nick.
Mormons. Hell yeah. He's done a lot about the Mormons as well, and just, making connections that you're like, why?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so weird. It's always something. I'll be studying some random thing that I find interesting, and not all of it is the occult even. And like I told you, I was looking at government things. Well, I mean, you can't spell CIA without LDS either. So, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad. They have infiltrated quietly to many places. And the funny thing is I think they stand behind another religion that we're not going to say, because if we do, then we're anti somethingites, and we aren't that. But the problem is, they get a good cover with that, and ultimately I feel like all religions,
it's a
whether-
very
yeah,
it's a very
whatever.
good cover. They have, crafted that cover well. Some 85 years ago, something very, very bad happened, and since then
Yes.
you're not allowed to say anything about them.
Cannot. Yes.
Nope.
And the thing is like, it makes it very difficult because, in any religion, at the top, I think it's corrupt. And that's why I've left religion, and I believe in God, and I'm a Christian still, but like, I am not the typical Christian as well. Like, I don't subscribe to a church. I don't do these things anymore. Yeah.
But then how
no.
do you talk to God if you don't go to church?
Yeah. Yeah. He talks to you, funny enough, if you just build that relationship, right? And people don't love that, but, it is what it is, and everybody has their own path. But as for me, fool me once, can't be fooled again, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a little Bush quote there. But yeah, I just feel like it's funny the way it always seems to combine. And that's because they're very involved in secret societies. And that's just the truth of it. So
it seems.
Yeah.
And even with the topic that, we picked for today, because you have
Yes.
several things going on. Little
Yes.
did I know. The orphan trains and the Cabbage kids, not to be confused with Cabbage Patch Kids, although
No,
there
yes.
might be a connection to them. I know that I first came on that topic from the channel Mind Unveiled.
Great channel.
They are amazing, doing
So good.
such amazing deep dives. And I mean, we all know the story about, like how either, the babies will grow in the cabbage, or, the stork brings the baby. That's what you tell your kids when they're very young, and they ask you, like, Daddy, like, how did I get there? You're like too young to go into the
Right.
birds and the bees.
Yes.
So, you'll just say, like, oh yeah, you grew out of a cabbage, and we saw you there. We thought you were, incredibly cute, and we were like, hey, we're gonna take you home. You're our son now. You're our daughter
There you
now.
go.
And apparently there is a whole freaking backstory to that, connected to several worldwide resets. Resets of the cycles, orphan trains, repopulation of the cities, tartaria.
Yes.
It's not just a story you tell your kids because they're too young to hear the actual story.
It's a weird phenomena, I think, that kind of played into these strange things I'm going to show you today. And it's kind of a weird place to go, because you think, okay, just like the Mormons, right? Like, why does this have anything to do with this? But yet, here we are at strange things. And especially in America, I feel like America's got this hidden history, and everybody just goes with whatever we were reprogrammed with. And so that is why I become weird, because ultimately, yeah, it's kind of weird. But I think a picture speaks 1,000 words. So I always like to bring my little slides, because it helps keep me focused with my ADD as well. So,
and I think it's also because America, as we know it as a nation, is still fairly new, of course.
Yes.
So like you can kind of make up the history as you go along. You can make up the stories as you go along, because who knows? Maybe they are true. You have like maps and sub-maps and everything. Wow.
yes, I'm going to make that
yeah,
go
the
away here. 1 second. There we go.
Incubator babies.
How about that? Is this just the only screen you can see now? Hopefully.
No, we're off to the side, but I can
Okay,
see
you
it.
can see
We
it,
can see
okay.
it well enough.
Okay, perfect. All right.
The flask, the homunculus. Even
yes,
with
we're
the
gonna
stork.
the stork. Yes. So the babies are kind of the first thing that helped me be like, okay, this is interesting. Like, why not look at things like I said, I think I'm very into strange phenomena, and I love to really give deep dives on things. And so it leads me here. And Mind Unveiled was a really good place also to go to. So I like to give him credit as well. And there's many books on a lot of this stuff. Of course, they're not going to call it Cabbage babies, right? They're not going to say this. And so
No,
to
definitely
kind
not.
of understand what the heck we're even talking about, we'll start with Dr. Tarnier, okay? And in 1881, he was the first one to try the kind of fertilization of a baby, and it was called the Embryo Project. And so this was constructed with chicken incubators. And so he noticed, like, oh, these preemie babies, okay, what if we did to them what we do to the eggs to like hatch the eggs? And he was kind of like the first inventor of the incubator. And so this kind of caught on a little bit, but it wasn't really blown into mainstream society. I actually had a great-great-grandma that was a twin. And she said we weren't expected to live because they were quite small, and they would also put them on heater vents and then cover the babies. So this wasn't like a known, like they kind of just went like, take your baby, sorry about it. And you hope they live. And usually they didn't, until this kind of started going on tour. And this happened at the same time as they're doing the World's Fairs, curiously enough. So
Yeah.
And it wasn't Dr. Tarnier who actually came up with, the science, of course, that made it famous. It was actually a different doctor. And his name is Dr. Martin Cooney. And this is him. And so Dr. Martin Cooney wasn't even a doctor. Isn't that fun? He allegedly apprenticed under a French obstetrician, which we don't even have the name of. So he had literally no medical license.
But he
Kind of
has the
strange that
code.
he's put in this position.
He has
Yes,
the code,
he
so
has a
he
code.
must be
He
a
looks
doctor.
very professional.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
the code, the tie, the stash. Very, very.
He looks very doctorly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And who is financing this, right? Like how fascinating that this infantorium, okay, comes along, and it's going to cost a grip of money. You have to understand, these women weren't the mothers of these babies. These were wet nurses. These actually were the women that fed them, and they had to be on a strict diet, and they had to have all this certain criteria, and then you've got all this money, putting this stuff together. And yes, people paid to go see the babies, but like, honestly, the amount of money alone to sustain something like this, just where Dr. Cooney is, right, on Coney Island, which is funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I've been watching the TV show about that. What is it? Boardwalk Empire.
Oh, I didn't know there was one. That's cool.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
have to check
it's
this.
an older show. It aired on HBO a couple years back, and it's set in the times of when that was a thing, times of the prohibition.
Okay.
And,
Well, it sounds
and everything.
fascinating.
And yeah, like it was a show, really. Like they were on display,
Yes,
you
they
know,
were.
and it's kind of
It's
creepy,
creepy.
actually,
It's a little
to
bit
think about.
creepy.
Preemie babies, they're not the healthiest, of course. I mean, they're preemie babies. We all know somebody who's was born too early.
Yes.
And they're often they're really small, and luckily with modern medicine, the chances are, a lot greater.
Yes.
But why put them on display? Like if you want to, if it's just about the, the marvels of modern, in those times, at least modern medicine, there's gotta be a better way than literally put them
Putting
on
them-
display for everyone to see as some kind of a
It was a sideshow. It was
Yeah.
a sideshow. But it was a big sideshow, because we have to think about what we're doing right at this time in our nation. Is we also have the orphan trains happening at the same time frame. Okay. Like, they're running neck and neck. And remember that we see all these pictures, and they're going to come up here. I'm just going to slide through these so that we can make
Sure.
this make sense. But they've got these babies kind of crammed in there, which isn't terrible, because they do better with a couple, actually. And as a nurse, I've worked in the NICU many times. You're right. It's not good for them to be taken out, messed with a whole bunch, paraded around, taking pictures of them out in the cold. When we're in the NICU, they don't come out at all except for feedings and change. You change them. You do everything at the same time. And that's only once every 3 hours. And otherwise, you're to leave them alone, just like as if they were in the womb, to
Yeah.
let them stay warm. And so
'Cause
it was
that's what
weird.
you're-
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what you're trying to recreate, right? It's kind of a
Yes.
artificial, womb, but not a womb, and that looks more like a they converted some
Like
kind
an
of
oven.
Yeah, an oven, or one of those old timey stoves
Yes.
into
Yep.
a very rudimentary medical device. And
Yes.
also just the thought process, it works on chickens.
Right.
Why not try it with humans?
Well, and the fact
Excuse
that
me?
let's also put in our minds one more thing. When we're getting to the orphan trains here in a second, we've got
Mhm.
kids in factories. We've got kids coming out of our ears in New York City alone. They are homeless. They are parentless. They are literally, they don't know what to do with all these children. Okay.
So
It's
then
at a
where are
point-
the parents?
Right. Where are the parents? But secondly, why on earth would you not let natural selection work its magic? Not trying to be crass here, but as if you've got a child problem, hey, we've got too many kids. Why would you then save children that naturally were designed to pass away? Okay. And he did. And 6,500 babies is how many he saved. But also the fact that they were giving these babies away, right? This wasn't like the parents came every day and come to get their babies later. Did some? Yes. Did others? Not a lot. And so they want to blame prostitution. They want to blame all these things. But here's the deal, guys. Other than multiple births, women can only have one baby a year. That's one. Other than multiple births, one. You cannot have more than one baby a year without multiple births. And honestly, if it was triplets, it's not making it back then, probably,
No, I mean, yeah, twins was already,
Mm-hmm.
it's
it.
already uncommon. You
Yep.
know, it's, and yeah, even even then, you know, if we're talking like indeed like the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s ish, you know, we weren't as far yet with medical technologies. So, you know, the fact that this was a thing to, you know, to help preemies stay alive and, you know, eventually have a life, that was a whole thing already. I mean, my grandmother, she, you know, she used to be a nurse, and when I see pictures of her, like in the old timey, you know, uniform and all, and when I, you know, when I hear the stories or like see it on TV or wherever about like how things were going back then, it's, you know, a lot of it is just hoping and praying that, you know, that it goes well and that we have done enough. But 6,500?
6,500. And this is in 1933. And remember, they have no idea what they're doing. Like, to keep these babies calm, they're giving them alcohol, little shots of literally bourbon.
I mean, it works.
Yeah, it does work. And it did, you know, addiction later probably. But here's the thing. Why are you saving these babies and making this happen? For what? For who? Who are going to be the parents of these children, right? Like, why is this happening at this point? It seems odd.
First of all, where are the parents? Like 6,500 babies, you know, if we're assuming all just, you know, single kids, single mothers, you know, either literally or figuratively, that's 6,500 mothers. That's 6,500 men, at least, who conceived a child.
And didn't care at all. Didn't care at all. Like, right? Like, as a parent, as a mother, I've had things happen in my life, like my last daughter, at strange timings where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm almost 40. Why is this happening now? Like, not being overly joyed, okay, about being pregnant, but also like, oh, well, we're happy to have a baby now, right? Like, it's a baby.
I mean, I'm a father of two myself, and I took up the father role for my my wife's son as well. So 3 kids basically, and like I'm still pretty young. Like, I just turned 33 5 days ago. You know, very fresh 33.
Woohoo! That's going to come into play in a second. We can talk about 33.
Of course. Of course it is. But, you know, so I was a young father, very, very young, maybe a little too young. My daughter will be turning 10 this year.
Okay.
So I was 22, 23.
I was exactly your age. I was 20 when I had my first. So I'm with you there. Yep.
And like, even as a very young father, still trying to figure out his own life, you know, taking care of a kid, like, you know, it's a responsibility. You know, you have to take on that responsibility.
You're not just going to leave the kid and be like, peace out. Like,
I know there are, you know, parents who do that. Unfortunately, that's why single mothers is a thing, unfortunately. But 6,500
and,
you know,
and moms,
men
and we're talking about moms here. We're talking about the birth of their baby and never seeing them again most of the time. Not saying sometimes they didn't go home with their parents. Sometimes they did. But like, literally. Yeah, okay,
but so like at least, let's say, you know, 6,000 of them. Or, you know, well, let's say a half. Like, let's go by the like the half kind of principle.
Yes.
That's 3,250 mothers, 3,000 plus mothers who never saw their baby again. And like never cared enough to
so weird.
Find out where the child is or with who the child is.
Or,
who
hey,
the
I
new
want them
parents
back.
are.
Yeah, I want this baby back. Like, when it's okay, if it ever is okay, right? Like,
that is
and
too
at the
much.
same time, we've got this, don't forget, this population issue. So we'll do New York City alone. We've got 500,000 people around this time frame when Charles Loring Brace, who was a mason, a master mason. What is that? That's why I joked with the 33. And he's involved, right? He's involved in this whole thing with the orphan trains at the same time. He's kind of the beginning, and then on the heels of it comes in Dr. Cooney. But Charles Loring Brace was a pastor. He was a Freemason. He started and ran the Children's Aid Society because we've got this population of 500,000 people-ish, okay, back east. And guess how many are orphans at this point? Like just a wild guess. And homeless.
Oh, 500,000. I'm going to say
Close on a different number for that one. But just for the kids that were homeless.
For the kids.
30,000 kids that are orphans that they don't know what to do with at this point. Just at this year.
30,000?
At the beginning. Only at the beginning. But the number, what I said you were close on, is guess how many kids were involved in the orphan trains, the actual trains themselves. And you're one of the only people that have come sort of close, overshot a bit.
Ooh, well, if it's 30, oh God, too much.
It's a fun one. It's 250,000 children. Okay.
What?
So we're talking about this population being not extensively high in this area. Now, there were riders on the train from other areas, not just New York City. And we were talking about New York City for these stats. But what I'm saying is they never let any children of color ride the trains either. So we're also minusing a lot, right? And we've still got these numbers. So no children that were not white could ride the trains ever.
So 30,000 in New York City alone, like
just
homeless
Yes.
children?
Yep. Homeless
Like,
children
I live
in the streets.
a smaller town here in the Netherlands, and that's like 90% of the people that live in my town.
Yes. And
It's like 90% of people that live here would be homeless children.
Well, look, they're putting him to work, right? They're putting him in factories. Like, this seems so
Cheap
strange
labor.
to me, right? Like, these are real photos, you guys. These aren't like photoshopped or anything. These are real pictures of what they're doing with these kids, because that show Newsies is formed around this whole situation, right? That these kids were living basically on their own, and they were as young as 5. And so the kids were taking care of kids, and then we've got the foundling hospitals initiated and also the orphan trains initiated. So think of the sheer number. When you're talking, the foundling hospitals are freaking huge. Like, have you seen some of the ones from back east, like in New York and those kind of areas? They're giant, but they still didn't have enough room. They still had to send these kids somewhere else. They're like, okay, we're out of room there and we're out of room there, but let's definitely save all the preemie babies. Why?
Yeah, like we have
Doesn't make
30,000
sense.
homeless children in
Yes.
New York City alone. 250,000. Yeah, like
This is an
riding
article. Yes.
the trains. But let's make sure there are even more homeless kids.
And that's why they would call them sewer rats or different little things like this, because they were sleeping in like little corners of places, like just kind of doing their own thing, these little kids. And
That's
people are
not a way
turning
to
a
live.
blind eye. Yeah. Well, and the fact that people are like, looks like a problem. What kind of person, right?
Jesus.
Like, and I get that money was tight for like the poverty line, but like even the rich people, like there's got to be some level where I say there's a disconnect, because they manipulated some of these things, and possibly the people were sketched about these kids and what these kids were. Okay. And I'm not saying that every orphan train rider or everything else was that, but like maybe there was some lore, not reality, lore around how these kids came to be, because it doesn't make a lot of sense that we've got the sheer number that we've got. These are all real photos. They're kind of pixelated because they're so old. So
that's fine.
that Charles Loring Brace has to step in, and he does. And the Masons run it, and they go from town to town, and they actually put these kids, like for sale.
Yeah.
Hold on, we'll do that in 1 second. So
That's
Charles
crazy.
Loring Brace was the one that coined the term "put up for adoption." Now, I'm not saying that it's any worse than slavery per se, but I will say this: you paid for your slaves; these children were free. And they would come to the Freemason areas into town with these trains, and they would put up the signs, in advance, and they would say, like, on this date, we're going to be here. And they would go look at their teeth and like look in their hair and their ears. And like
So,
these were workers. They were farm
like,
workers. They,
really know better than
Yeah.
they did with, the actual, transatlantic slaves and all,
yeah.
like
And it's sad.
treating them as animals, really.
They,
like
well,
that's
and literally
you
they
do
did
with
not check up on the families.
no,
Yeah.
and
And
that's what you do with a horse. Like, you check the teeth to see like how old the horse is, how healthy the horse is, like
yes.
how wide are its eyes, how strong is he, and all of that. With slaves, not saying that's okay, but at least there's like
No.
some sort of a
They were
disconnect
valued.
because-
They were valued, at least, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You didn't want, them to die.
were- and they could was a possibility, gain their freedom, buy their freedom. They were still treated as third, second rank citizens at best.
Absolutely.
But and at least there was some sort of a disconnect because they came from a whole different continent and we've never been there and we don't know the people. So
But this
but-
is very strange.
but
And
these are
then we've got-
kids.
But we've got all this happening, don't forget, at the same time. At the same time, we've got the riders. We've got babies by parcel post, okay?
I heard
we've got-
about that. Yeah.
And this is so strange. This is like these packages, right, are well wrapped. And these people are just sending their infants. God only knows, like with predators and stuff, like that's not a real new concept, guys. This was like since the dawn of time that people did not do good things to other people. So we've got, your most precious thing in the earth, and you're going to send it by mail. Oh,
But-
wow.
With this picture that you're showing me now, first of all, à vendre, for sale, dude. But they do not look like unhealthy babies.
No,
they're
super
not.
chubby.
They have that. Yeah, they have those chubby cheeks. They have like the big head. Like like thinking like about my
Look at
my
this one.
son. He's always had a big head.
Yeah,
That is
look
a
at how
very
big this
well-known-
one is.
That's a very
Mhm.
well known picture.
Very. And
I've
look
seen
at the
that multiple
baby's
times.
characteristics, as you're saying. This
That's
isn't
a
a
baby?
baby that was starving. This is probably, in my estimation as a nurse, a 10-month-old. Between 10 months and 13 months is what I'll say.
That's
But this
hardly a
man-
baby anymore.
This man looks like he's starving, and this baby looks like it's been fed very well. We
The
will say
baby
that.
is more meals than the postman, and better
Right.
meals than the postman.
But also the look, right? Like if you know anything about certain bloodlines, right? Like the look is very like the forehead is really large, the head is really big, like certain
Yeah.
things like this. And it's kind of strange. Like I'm not saying that they did do anything, but it just makes you wonder, because all of these babies, with the exception of this one, look pretty well nourished. Okay.
Yeah.
This one does look a little on the thin side. But some babies are, my grandson was on the thin side first little bit of his life. So it's a
there
thing.
we go.
But here we get into this weird phenomena at the same time. And people are like, oh, but
Postcards.
Anne Geddes, right? Like Anne Geddes made these
Yeah,
cute
it's-
things later. But
We've
this seems
all seen
strange.
that. She her calendars are for sale here as well at just your regular bookstore. It's very, very cute, very cutesy. Dressing up babies as like bumblebees and whatever. And
Yes.
You know,
bees. Bees
the
are
cute-
important. And
God, of course,
on
I had
top
to.
of
I
it-
had to mention bees.
what do we say in the back? Like here, like we've got a church. Okay, well, that's odd. But also, if you really look at these, right, these babies all look like those babies in the mail. They are very chubby.
Yeah.
They've got this high forehead, these little bit, narrow, close together eyes, but they're really big, right?
Widow's
These
peak.
big eyes. Yeah. And then you see these babies in these other photographs. And I want to point out, right? The woman is almost always, I would say in maybe 5% of the postcards that I have viewed, she is in a red dress, right? And that's interesting
Lady in
with
Red.
Crowley later and the Scarlet Whore of Babylon. And we get into a whole lot of things. So this is supposedly the Brave New World here in America. And, it's kind of interesting to me. about the Scarlet Whore of Babylon and Crowley's teachings. And people always get after me and they say, well, you're a Christian. What are you doing looking at that stuff? Well, if you want to understand some things, you'll look into everything, right? Because the occult has a lot of answers.
Yep.
And they know the Bible better than we do half of the time. So
yeah, they do.
It is what it is. If you want to find out some answers, you got to know the context. You got to understand some things. Once again,
I'm a Germanic pagan, and I probably know
See?
the Bible and the scriptures better than half of the
Most
people who call
Christians.
themselves Christians. Yeah.
I mean, you've probably read it, I don't know that.
No,
I'm not going to say
even.
all. I'm not going to say all Christians, but
I've done
a lot haven't read. Yeah.
I've done some deeper research into it. I have talked to a lot of people. I am very good friends with a Christian. She's actually one of my my moderators on my Telegram channel.
Cool.
Yeah, she's a lovely woman, and I mean my parents grew up Catholic or Roman Catholic, so I've been around the faith. I have, heard a lot, read a lot, seen a lot, but I can approach it from a different angle with a more open mind.
Right,
perhaps.
right. Because, well, the Christians get a bad name because, it ends up in these weird factions that become very cult-like. And, that's for all of them, not just the Mormons. It gets weird. And so basically what I'm saying is the occult people have no qualms studying Christianity, but Christianity has a lot of qualms with studying vice versa.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense because there's knowledge in all things. And if you want to understand anything, you've got to dip your feet. I'm not saying you have to know everything, but
it's good to know a little about a lot, because then you always have something to go off, something to go deeper on, to go further from.
So, and on this population picture, which is showing repopulation.
Again, the lady in red.
Well, and we've got the Masonic compass here. We've got a lock on him. She has the key. Do you see it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I do. Oh.
And we've got a strange animal right here. Don't you think that's really weird? We've got an armadillo right here, which is really close to, some other things that they have used or spoken about in alchemy. When, like a salamander, we talk about these strange animals that sometimes can regenerate, right?
Yeah.
Because, and so I find it interesting, very interesting, that we've got this strange looking, and it almost looks like a salamander. It really is close. Only reason why I say armadillo is because of these little lines here.
Yeah.
But it's weird, right? This is a very weird picture. These babies are coming out. They're everywhere, right?
What kind of device
is
is that even?
Right, exactly. What is this device? And it looks very alchemical. They're pouring chemicals into the funnel, and then they are, making babies. And I found this picture very telling, right? I find this very interesting. And they don't seem very, they don't care about these kids. Like, they're falling on the floor. I mean, the one baby's grabbing his leg, but he doesn't seem to care. Like, this is a process that they're doing. And honestly, they don't seem to really care one way or another about these kids.
It's like it's just another product.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, I would venture to state.
You work with it day in, day out. So yeah, it's a product. It's what you do. It's what you make.
What you're doing. Yes. And I find it interesting when we go back even further. And like I said, when you're studying things, right? When we're studying about ancient technologies or ancient gods and goddesses, well, you might know a little more about this one, right? This is Diana of Ephesus.
Yeah.
And do you know about, the Diana of Ephesus information, why she has all these egg/breasts on her, right?
I know. I know Nick has spoken about this.
This is a very strange thing, right? And who do they say first came out, like, with the whole procreation test tube babies, right? This was a known thing, and it was known in India, like, for a long time. And they say this. They say that this was part of the Amazon women culture, right? They didn't have men, but they still had babies. How does that work, right? And that they would lay on the ground, and they were the one-breasted women, and they would get pregnant from the rays of the sun. This is like an old lore story. And so when we get into old lore, right, and queen bees like Artemis, right, like, and the cult of Cybele and Mother Goddess and Ishtar and all these things, like the flame of creation, right, Libertas. And so when we're talking about this kind of old stuff, and we know, wow, that just went. My computer loves to do that to me.
So
when we know that this is a thing.
Yeah,
but they don't look like boobs.
I've seen them. I've seen different kinds. No, and it's also that what you just mentioned. It's the also the Immaculate Conception story.
Yes, and these look like, people say these are boobs, but I'm sorry, these look like egg pods to me. This looks very much like an egg sac of like what you would think of a woman's ovary. Okay. Like holding, or even an egg sac of a spider, if you want to go there, right? This looks very similar to that to me. Whereas people say, oh, this is a multi-breasted goddess. And I'm like, is it?
I mean,
or are they eggs? And this is signifying a different thing for fertility.
Multi-breasted, even if it's for, all those kids, perhaps.
Yes.
How the hell are you going to do that? That's like, are you just gonna, I don't know, like just like a pig, like lay on your side and.
But isn't that strange that they already were worshiping this statue? And so that leads me to believe, like, there's a reason. They didn't just say, oh, this is a god of this because, right? They had reasons for what they chose each god to be, and how they looked and all the things. So it makes you really question, like, what are they trying to tell us here? Like, what are they showing us? And then you do get into weird things like the homunculus, and Juan does a good job on this. Juan on Juan podcast.
Juan. I've had him on for the homunculus. It is.
Yes, he goes hard on the homunculus, and he talks all about it. And I'm telling you guys, why would this story of how to create it, right, with the Book of the Cow, if we get into Paracelsus, why would we have certain writings like that if it was all BS? If he's just a crazy guy? Paracelsus wasn't crazy.
No, but isn't this just like the sort of like the medieval version of a test tube baby? But
that's
then
my question.
A little more literally, because it's literally a baby, or at least size of a baby,
and a test tube, right? And they were transferring a lot of times. This shows like the beginning into a womb of a cow. And this gets into the Book of the Cow, and they do a way better job at breaking that down than I do. But it's a very interesting book, and it talks about all the fluids that you need and everything. But why would you say you accomplished something if you really never did? Okay, maybe one guy, right? Like maybe there's one guy that's just this narcissistic, crazy guy, and he just wants to like own everything and be the one, and that's fine. Okay, great. But also, why would it continue and continue and continue to be mentioned and written about if it wasn't true, right? Like at all? No, it is. It's written about on and on and on and on, to the point where they basically, hit it. And then again, we see birds here, which is interesting to me. Like there's multiple pictures from old books that are very curious, if nothing else. All right, we'll just say
that's
curious.
That's also like the thing that I constantly ask, like with any story of any being or any weird thing.
Yes.
It's like, somebody could have made it up, sure, like especially if we go into like the stories of our ancestors, what I do a lot on the podcast. So many people will say, oh, they just had a very rich imagination.
And maybe
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure they had. I'm sure, you know, their imagination and their creativity was still, I want to say like a lot purer than ours because everything, you know, has been done. It has been portrayed in numerous ways. So like we have, you know, when we think of a superhero, who do we think
Right.
of? 9 out of 10 times, Superman. Why?
Yeah.
Because for us, at least in the Western world, he is the quintessential superhero because he's been presented that way.
Right.
Okay,
And
cool.
it makes it normal to have somebody that is right of good blood or well born or have these extra things like right if you didn't know what could happen and you didn't have to have the baby and you could make your baby have an edge up in life by just, you know, subscribing to certain things, would a lot of people do it? I state they would. I state they do.
Aren't we already
do
with
it
the
now.
whole
Yes.
CRISPR thing? CRISPR
Yes,
babies?
they do. Yes, and Clonade is the first of this stuff even before the CRISPR babies, right? Because Clonade was laughed off and protected so brilliantly. Now, this was protected because why? Clonade was realism, and realism is a religion. So what
Of
kind of
course.
protection does he have that normal people do not have? He doesn't have to be a doctor. He doesn't have to be a scientist. He doesn't have to play by the certain rules because why? It's a religion. And so he is
He
granted
looks like a
certain
cult
things.
leader.
Oh, he totally is. He's still alive to this day.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Well-
This is Claude Verilion, who was actually just an auto racing journalist. Okay, this guy. And he
That's-
starts getting into cloning, and right around the same time, like he finds Clonade in 1997, and right around that time, what do we know is going on in the world? Dolly, right? The sheep. And so we
Yeah.
know that cloning is happening at this time frame because now there's like this whole, like there's this Dolly the sheep and they're cloning other things, and they've cloned a whole bunch of things by now. And they have to step in the government and say, hey, I don't know about this. And Clinton does that. But then do we trust anything Clinton does? Not I. But yeah, it's weird, right? And all of a sudden, him and his first lady kind of thing, her name is Bridget Bossele. Okay. They go on and say in 12/27 of 02 that they created the first baby to be born that was cloned. And guess what they named her?
Oh, Eve.
It's a fun
right?
one. Yes, Eve.
Yeah.
And they make
How
this
typical.
whole announcement, and they're like, oh, you know, we're going to do this announcement and come on and see. And then they were a no-show with the parents. Well, then I'm watching this other thing, and this is not like garbage news. This is 60 Minutes, right?
That is established media.
Established media. And the other one was CNN on these announcements, okay?
It's a very, very bad Photoshop job, by the way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, but I watched this. I watched it, and it's real. It's in Australia, and it was a real episode. And so he's talking about it again later, like they're going to do it, but they already said they did. And they also said in that CNN, and you guys can look up, CNN is like, I mean, it's mainstream at least,
it's
that
as
they had
mainstream as mainstream
5
gets.
Yeah, 5 more babies that were being born between 12/26 and February 4th of 03, from 02 to 03. But then again, he does this late at a later time point, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing that now." And I'm like, "Wait, you said you already did that." They just pretended like it never happened, like the whole CNN thing did not happen,
So,
and that they're just gonna,
Like
do it now.
actively causing a Mandela effect of some.
It
some
was
kind?
very strange. It was very strange. I almost feel like it was like a hiding, right? And then you get these weird movies, okay, that the directors are putting out. And this was a big one in the 70s. My mom always talks about this show, Invasion of the Pod People, right? And what are they coming out of? These pods that look like cabbages.
Yeah.
And so I find it really weird that we have all this lore, okay, for lack of a better word. We have all this scientific, we'll call it junk, science for right now for Clonate, but that website photo that I showed you for Clonate is the current website that's up and running right now.
Really?
It's still a thing.
I love the like the mirrored as above, so below, like
Yeah.
logo image. It's
Yes.
very
It's
telling.
just- it's
It's
very
very-
interesting, right? I
to
mean,
say
we
the
know
least.
this. They've cloned 22 species, including like monkeys and all these other things. And we know that they actually can clone embryos, but they're supposed to terminate them within a certain amount of weeks. Okay. Like they can't keep it alive because it's against the cloning rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're
But
totally
what about
all,
other places?
They're totally
Yeah.
all doing that. You know, they're
Yes.
all just good, law-abiding citizens.
Right.
You know,
And what
they
do we
took an
know?
oath, and all of that. So they would never.
Yes. So what do we know too that they did if they would never, right? This is another thing I like to bring up when we talk about they would never. What did they do to the DNA sample of the woman, the HeLa cell? Do you know about the HeLa cell? This is like a real actual thing that they have.
Can't say I do, but it's
Okay.
like talking about the cloning of animals. I actually I talked about that a little bit with Colby, Shamanic Earth, who I had on before this. Don't know how we got there. Like we got on the topics of pets because because Big Red Timmy, my cat, jumped up. And it's a fact that for like a bunch of money, like 40, 50K or something, you can have your dog or your cat cloned.
Yes. Yes.
Like that is, it's still kind of new, but it is a possibility
Yes.
already.
And even though we absolutely know that they're not supposed to keep samples and do all these things, right? When it comes to humans, what do we know about the HeLa cell? We know this. Henrietta Lacks is the one that the HeLa cells come from, okay? And she went into the Johns Hopkins Hospital in 1951 for vaginal bleeding, okay? Dr. Howard Jones, a gynecologist, discovered a malignant tumor on her cervix, and she underwent radium treatments for cancer. Now, this tissue was taken from her and sent to the Dr. George Geys's, I'm assuming it's gay, tissue lab. And Dr. Gay discovered that her cells were unlike any cells he had ever seen. Well, these cells now are considered to be the eternal cell, okay? That they completely reproduce on their own. And these cells continue and continue to reproduce even to this day, and they reproduce indefinitely, okay? So this prolific line of cells have been used for research throughout the world, but they didn't get her permission and they didn't pay off her family. And it's all this whole big thing that they've done when we're speaking of what we should do with human cells, right? What are they doing with everybody else's? This is one woman, okay?
That also makes me think like there was a whole thing with the like during the pandemic, you know,
it was a huge
everybody had to
grab.
be, like everybody had to be swapped, you know, have a Q-tip stuck halfway up your brain. I
100% agree with
I've
you.
done it. I've had to have done it once.
I absolutely agree that it was a huge grab.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And a
when
lot of the tech billionaires will now, like at the very least, Bill Gates is very much
we're gonna
involved
talk
with
about him.
DNA things and all that. Yeah, I know. With the preemie babies and all. I
Billy Boy.
already had that in the back of my mind. Like
Billy Boy
the
always
Gates.
comes up. He's always in the middle of everything, isn't he? Billy Boy's
I wonder
naughty.
like how many you'd be like removed from finding Bill Gates with something.
Well, and honestly, he's into it up to his eyebrows. Like, but we're going to talk about him in a minute, and we're going to start here with the olden days, because anything that they have continued into the future, right, has started with the past. And so we look at these old things, like I said, remember the church in the background of the cabbages, okay? And then they find these things later on, like Ben Franklin's house and all the graves there. And this huge grave containing the remains of babies and children discovered in Ireland. Up to 800 had died, right? This is the Tuam baby scandal, but they're not alone. This is just one example, okay?
800.
And many times what they'll say is, oh, well, that was like a Native American burial ground, or that was this, or that was that. The sheer number of babies. Oh, well, maybe they were doing illegal, getting rid of babies type of situation.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
800 of them?
800 in one spot, one tiny spot. It makes you wonder what on earth is going on at this time. And also,
I know that
like
the
1,200 pieces of bones in Benjamin Franklin. Like,
I know that the Irish Catholic, they're well renowned for their fertility and having of many kids, like, one a year, because that's God's will. It's even a thing that,
but 800
that people ask, if you have a lot of kids, like, oh, Irish Catholic?
Yeah, or Mormon.
Yeah.
Right,
well,
now,
in the US,
nowadays.
it'd be Mormon. Here in Europe, it's more Irish Catholic. But yeah, 800 of them. And sure, the church does shady stuff. We all know they do and always have done. But 800,
yeah, in one tiny area. So here's my question to you.
That also shouldn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, for sure. And if you were trying to be the inventor, the alchemist, okay, back then, who would most likely be the alchemist and have the time to even do that, right? Well, my conjecture is, and this is a conjecture, priests. I mean, they have women right here with the nuns to help them with this whole situation, like the gathering of the supplies, the menstrual blood, blah, 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 all this stuff that they need with the Book of the Cow, okay? Mm-hmm. And who would continue on doing these kind of experiments is going to be, my thoughts are clergy and Freemasons, right? Like, who's going to have the time? The farmer that's working all day? No,
well, that's how they did it in the olden days, even, like in medieval times, like science and religion, they were the same people because, as you said, they had the time. Because what else were they doing? I mean, like copying the Bible, very intricate, very beautiful, of course. They were the only ones, usually the only ones who knew how to read and write, because indeed they have the time to learn that, to study that. That's why so many
Absolutely.
great beers come out of abbeys, and so many good wines come out of abbeys, because they have the time to perfect that.
Well, and not only that, but we start seeing some really weird things about this time frame, back then with, we don't see the issues that we used to see with babies anymore, like these horribly deformed babies. And people say, well, people were inbreeding, or we have better prenatal care now. Do we? I mean, honestly, the food back then was probably 10 times what our vitamins are, because nothing we eat now, nothing we eat is food. Not really.
Well, in Europe, still a little more than the U.S.
Yes, absolutely.
But increasingly less, unfortunately.
Less and less and less. Yeah. And then we've got, these things that are happening at this time, which in 1940, one of the most rare things that has ever happens. And it's the RH factor. And I know all about this because my great grandma had this. Okay. And it was before there was a shot or anything for it. She lost multiple children, all the way almost to the end of the pregnancy, like 8 months. Even one was ready to be born, and she didn't know it had died inside of her and was completely decomposing inside of her body. And it probably is what saved her from being able to have babies in the future, because even back then, they checked your blood types. This is why they checked your blood types. This is why they started screening people to get married, right? You had to get your blood drawn to get married, because they needed to see what was happening with this RH factor. Well, okay, we get RH negative people, but then never again have we ever had this ever happen again. People say, well, that's mutation. Oh, well, okay. How come it never happened again? Like, we're
Because-
messing with genetics more than ever now. And how come
because
it's
it
not
mutated
happening?
itself away again.
Right. And the Basques are a super big part of this because 85% of the Basques that are completely isolated from the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
They have this RH factor. But guess who else does? The royals. So the royal bloodline, the one thing they never travel without is blood. They take their own blood with them because of their RH factor. They are RH negative.
That's
And
a little
so-
creepy.
It's creepy. Yes. And I'm like, okay, but also who do we see the most birth defects in, right? Royal families and all this weird stuff that happens. And it literally talks about this. These are real articles like on the royal family.
In
And
the
so-
European royal families,
Oh, I
yes,
am.
there
I am.
was a lot of inbreeding there as
Yeah.
well. There still is, or at least we're seeing the consequences of
But
it.
it can't explain actually creating a whole entire new race of blood that it's never happened before or since. And it happens
No.
right along the same time as
Oh,
Roswell and everything else. And then we get into an even more fun situation where
Is
we get
that-
into something called pickled punks. And this is a real photo.
is that
and-
DiCaprio?
It is. Yep. These people know things. And when you talk about royals or you talk about
He looks
billionaires.
so smug.
yeah, or other things. This is something that you can't ignore. And these babies that are called pickled punks, it was a huge phenomenon. So pickled punks is the Carney term for human fetuses preserved in jars of formaldehyde, and they use them as sideshow attractions. And they're displayed some sort of anatomical abnormalities, such as conjoined twins or deformities, all these things at this point. The more messed up they were, the more popular they were. Okay.
Well,
So,
yeah, it's because
but I want to tell you guys something when we're talking about numbers. Now, if this was a little bit, okay, cool, whatever. But I want you to play a guess again. First of all, we'll use Ulysses Aldrovandi. Okay. He was a royal and he had his own collection of pickled punks. Do you want to take a guess how much one person had?
Oh, this is going to be some
He's like a royal.
ridiculously high number again. I don't know, 5,000.
18,000 in just
What?
his collection. And also Peter the Great, funny enough, had the biggest collection. And these samples actually are real. And they come from the Kunstkamera Museum, Kunttskamera. And they are real. And Peter the Great had the most. And all of them, like I said,
What
here is
the hell?
part of this
Oh.
museum.
What?
And these babies are not normal. Okay. Now, could you get
No.
swollen from, death and then some of them, okay, maybe this one
sure.
is just swollen. Sure.
I
But
mean,
some of
there
these
is-
have extreme deformities. Look at this. Look at this
That's-
situation, right?
That looks
Or
like
this
an
one.
old man almost.
Right. Exactly. Very strange. Or look at this one with no legs, like just
Yeah.
weird,
I
like
know
conjoined
that-
together.
Within the Amsterdam Medical Center, there is a small, I believe it is a museum of some kind, very similar to this, with like all kinds of deformities.
And weird, strange.
But
Yeah.
but like presented in a in like more of a medical sense, of course, because it is literally within the building of the Amsterdam Medical Center. I've been there a few years ago. It's a place that you can freely visit.
Right. And same with this museum. Yeah.
They'd like
this
to
museum.
they'd like you to leave a donation, of course.
Mhm.
But some very strange things.
Strange.
On the picture, the bottom
Previous?
left,
Here.
yeah, is that like on the most right one? Is that a cyclops?
Right? It's very strange. Yeah, I don't even
It's
like some of the actual things that you're going to see on here, and I've gone through more of them. They're very weird. And why are royals obsessed with keeping them? And why?
I mean, they're into some
Weird stuff,
weird
right?
shit. Anyway, I've talked to Yost. He is a former member, at least, of a vampire cult here in the
Yes.
here in the Netherlands and worldwide. And he has definitely shared some weird shit.
Yes,
But it's always the royals.
it is. And billion, you know, the people
Yeah,
with the
like
most money.
That goes hand in hand. People with a lot of power, whether it be through
Yes.
blood or through money, or
But-
blood money, I guess.
The skulls of many of these babies, just so you know, they not only had problems with their cephalic index, they actually had changes in their skulls, and not from cradle boarding. They had like alien length skulls because they hadn't been born to cradle board, so there was no cradle boarding, and these cephalic indexes were off, way off. Okay. And so you also start to find some other strange things when you get into this loosh grab, like you were talking about in 2020, and you actually already brought up Anne Warchicki's sister. So you're right. This is the woman, Anne Warchicki, who her sister was over YouTube, and she is over 23andMe. On the same day that Diddy was arrested, this happened. And I took a screenshot of it on my phone, and it was the exact same day every person on the board of 23andMe quit, on the exact same day.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Every single person. Yes. And
Like
so,
every
and
one of-
this is from their site. If you look at the bottom, investors.23andme.com. So I'm not making this up.
No,
This really happened on the same
like-
day at the same time.
and especially if it's like investors.23andme and, you know, a press release, this is a big deal.
This was a
'cause
press
if
release.
if it's going out, especially for the investors, they're basically telling you, like, hey,
There's a problem.
you might want to pull out, you know?
Yes. There
'Cause
is
this
a
is-
huge problem. Yes.
This is going to drop.
So I haven't put a picture of this yet, but I want to put a picture on here of something called a PKU test. Have you heard of a PKU test before? So
No.
if you haven't,
can't
it's
say
okay. I can
have.
tell you. The PKU test is a phenylalanine test, and it's basically checking for this weird allergy that people have to milk. And basically, they're like, "Oh, everybody's baby has to be checked for it, even though it's a super rare thing that ever happens." Okay, it doesn't happen hardly ever, but now every baby born has to have this test done. And supposedly, you know, this is for their own well-being, okay?
Yeah, well,
But these cards, right? Yeah, it's kind of...
we've
and
heard
these
that
cards
before.
look like a old library card. Like if you've ever seen a Dewey Decimal System, have you seen that before? Like you're
I
so
believe-
young, probably.
No, I do think I know. Yeah.
So it's kind of like the size of an envelope, okay? And this is going to be important here in a second when I show you something. But they do this test on every single baby, and it goes through. And like I said, it checks for the lactase. And the funny thing is, and I like to mention this, the PKU means you do not make enough melanin, okay? So they've got light skin, light eyes. They cannot eat certain proteins, and they're extremely light colored people, like almost albino,
So,
okay?
yeah.
So they can't
That's
digest
very
proteins
rare.
correctly, but this is how often it happens. Only 1 in 10 to 15,000 people, okay? I finally got a mom that wrote me in that said this happened to my kids. Because I'd said I'd never in my life, all the years I've been a nurse, 25 years, seen one come back positive. And so she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, this happened to my kids." She wrote into me. And I was like, "Oh my
Oh,
gosh,
that's cool.
that's so wild." But here's the thing. We don't do tests for other rare genetic disorders at birth that are even more common than this. Okay. There are
Yeah.
lots of other things that are more common than this, but we just let it ride until they freaking present with symptoms. Pretty much. That's the normal way you do it. You know?
Yeah, and like we heard that, you know, like during the pandemic as well. You know, it's for your good. It's for the greater good.
Greater
And,
good.
you know,
I'm
we
sure it
have
was
to,
too.
we have to test you because we don't know if you're sick. Well, if I don't display any symptoms, Oh no, but you can be asymptomatic.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it was just a huge grab.
I'm sure that's a thing with, you know, some illnesses, I'm sure.
Yes.
But, you know, it's basically, and that was the whole thing, and also why I refused it every damn time. I refused the
Well,
Q-tip halfway up my brain. I
and
refused the needle into my arm. You
I
know,
definitely, I
you
did
were
the same.
you were sick until proven healthy.
Yes. And here's the thing. Even if they didn't get you then, think of every time you've given blood. Think of every time it goes off to where? Some lab where you don't know. And think of every surgery you've ever had. Think of, especially if you've had a hysterectomy or you've had anything done with your sex organs as a male. Think of all of the tissue samples that they sent. Remember what they did to the Gila sample. Do not forget that, because they didn't compensate her. They didn't get her permission, and they don't give a crap. Okay? So think about this and times it by everyone. Okay? And think of how much deep shit you would be in, right? Because what if this specific company got a hold of it, right? And they know that something's going to come down the pipe on them. Because also the thing that people forget about Epstein, do you remember what he was doing at his ranch in New Mexico? He was breeding. He had a breeding program. He had a bunch of women that he was trying to impregnate with his perfect seed. Do you also remember that Hitler was searching for something very important, and it wasn't about Jews? Look, it was about Jewish people to a point, because he just didn't like them. But he was searching for a perfect race. The specific things that he was looking for were like big eye teeth like mine, or like how white you were, or like your veins, like the blue blood veins, right? He was looking for a whole bunch of stuff.
And he did a lot of reverse genetic engineering as well.
Yes.
I remember seeing a documentary about that. I mean, at the very least, he did it
very
with,
shadow banned at this point to try and find info.
Probably. He did it with cattle, because he was really like trying to bring back the like the true primal, like bull,
the North,
or
the people
cow.
of the North too. Yeah.
For sure.
This huge thing that he was up
Eugenics
to, right?
was a very large part of it. You know, that's why, you know, his vision of the I know this is, you know, probably gonna get the video shout out. I don't give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Ubermensch, the Aryan race. You know, basically guys like me, you know, 6 foot, blonde hair, blue eyes, just you know, sturdy northern young man.
Yes.
And
these people that they believed made like a big portion of the world, basically, if you believe in it.
Very much incentivized, actually, you know, having children, all for the you know, the good of Germany, of course.
Oh, right.
You know, for
right. Of course. But here's the thing that we do nowadays. What do we do to people nowadays? The regular people, like, don't have kids. But, like, how many kids does Elon Musk have? Oh. How many kids do Mormons have? You want to know why he likes Mormons so much? And I'll tell you. Hitler has a quote of saying, I love Mormons, basically. They are the ultimate Ubermensch because they don't mix their race. And he was very specific about it. And we didn't. We didn't mix our race until I think it was 1968. Now, don't quote me on that date because I don't have my slide up. Mm-hmm. When they changed that the Black people could be in our church and have the full church experience and have their temple recommended and all the things, right? So many people didn't join until then. But here's the thing. He was very keyed in, and I have a whole episode on the Nazis and Mormons. People should check out, because I'll tell you, there is a lot bigger stakes than this, and I'll show you why. Because and it goes
I
into
know
Howard
that
Hughes
part of his how he incentivized you know, young healthy German men to, you know, have more kids is he provided affordable housing, I believe, or, you know, at the very least an affordable mortgage. And with every child that you had, I believe it was, he took like 25% of your like off of your mortgage. So
Well, and it
with-
was only certain people, but it wasn't just about Jewish people. But
No,
Jews were
it's-
an easy target, right?
yeah,
I mean,
sure, because they are
Where's my pen?
they are in control and on top of very, big things, especially like money wise. They've always been known as, the money lenders and all.
Well, but they also their genealogy was darker and came from a different place, and that wasn't exactly what he wanted. But he also hated them because he lost his niece girlfriend to some Jewish guy. But
unless we're talking
which is
about
creepy.
unless we're talking about the Ashkenazi Jews, who are
Right.
actually very, very white and very like either blonde or
No, I'm talking about
reddish.
the real,
The
I guess the
actual,
line of
yeah.
Adam,
Sure,
type of
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Because what does Adam mean? That means ruddy. Okay. It means reddish. Okay. His skin was a reddish hue to it. That was why they called him, Adam. And so of the soil. And so it's like that reddish brownish, and that makes sense. Because if you look at the people of that area, like, yeah, that makes sense, But also, what is the people that are usually assassinated, for lack of a better word? As soon as the white people come to any place, what do? They immediately annihilate all the brown or black people, right? Like immediately, like the Indians, like all these people, like
Yeah.
native people of certain countries, like, Columbus gets here, what does he do? And they just, it's like an immediate, like you would think that would be counterproductive, like where you need to build things or like figure out the land. Or,
and they lived on the land for many, many, probably hundreds of years. So
yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, hey, this is where we go hunting at. Like, it's better to be a good neighbor, right? That's not what they did.
No, exactly. They can show you the good spots. It's like, and even with things like farming, I just
they knew the
just
land.
today actually saw and read why they grew corn, beans, and squash. Corn because that grows so high and it gives the beans something to climb on, to grow and climb on, and squash because it protects the ground and keeps the bugs and all away. And those would be very handy things to learn if you arrive on a new continent and you have no idea what's there.
Right.
You're gonna ask the people who are already there, like, hey, we're new here, where we come from, it's no bueno.
But they don't
they
do
were still
that.
Spanish,
Yeah.
so no bueno.
Yeah.
Can you show us? Can you teach us? Like, you've been here before, obviously. Show us how to do this. Show us how to live here.
And that what do they do instead? They immediately annihilate everyone. And that's weird to me. Like, this is a tale as old as time because, even they annihilate their own, right? If you get to Baal worship, and we're not going to go into all this today, but when you get into the Canaanites and different things, you're going to understand better about what is happening with this race war, really, this big race war. And when did it change and why? And why are old white men from Utah so damn fascinated with it, right? So this is a real place where I live. This is called the Granite Genealogical Vaults, and they keep all of the genealogy. They blew the side of a mountain out and made a bat cave. This is real. And they did this to house their genealogical records, okay? This is it.
Very protective over it. If they blow out the side of a mountain just to store
So see this tiny road, when you're coming
Yeah.
in, this little road is the only way in. There's razor wire everywhere. You cannot go in it. There's no way to get in but that tiny little road. And it is like Fort Knox here. Okay. And this is where they house all of their genealogical samples. Remember me saying they looked like an envelope, like the size of an envelope? Well, they look exactly like this drawer. Those PKU tests are exactly this big. Now, I'm not saying that the government sends them a copy, but I will tell you this. There's 3 copies that they have. They have the hard copy and 2 litmus paper copies that it goes through, and I don't know where the others go to. They can be stored for centuries, I assume. They are done on special paper where the blood can dry and be stored. There's 5 samples of blood across each one, and this is done to every child in America unless you are completely off-grid and never get a Social Security card, etc. This is done routinely and you do not really get told about it. We just do it as soon as they get in the nursery.
It's just a thing that you do. It's become so
for 1 in 10,000 occurrences.
Yeah,
at the most.
When there are things that are way more dangerous and way more prevalent.
Absolutely, there is. What about diabetes? What about heart problems? What about all these other things that can be congenital?
Especially in the United States, it's that's a problem, and increasingly so. So that is definitely something you would want to look at.
Is one tiny hallway.
That's a tiny hallway.
One tiny hallway of these records, of multiple hallways full of these records.
That's
of genealogical records. Yes.
That's probably several thousand already.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think there's one more picture with a guy standing there. Let me see. Nope, I took it out. So the hallway that we're looking at is so big. This is one tiny row, and these are all genealogical records. Now, I'll tell you something. There's a critical part, and maybe I have the picture in here. It might be under my eugenics folder. There's a critical part that Bill Gates' family plays in all of this. And it's very strange, right?
His father was really into eugenics.
Well, his father was, but it wasn't his good old dad. And everybody misses this because, and I think I took it off, and I'll have to double check. So I'm going to come back to you to see you, because that's the end of that slideshow, but I'm actually not done talking. If that's okay.
Yeah,
I can stop sharing though, because my thousands of windows. There we go.
Yes.
And so the one fun thing I like to bring up is the Mormon Church was integral not only with going to Nazi Germany to help the Nazis after the war. They were one of the only people that did that. They are actually documented, and if you Google it, it will say, no, they didn't do that. They helped their parishioners, right, at the war. Oh, you mean, okay, so if they joined the church, they got food. Got it. Okay, so we had this influx of joining. They also agree on things, right? Like Hitler, and they align. Okay,
the purity
very well.
And all of that. Yes,
absolutely.
Sure.
And they've got aligning mental, thoughts about things and whatnot. So also we've got the Gates, and they play into the Mormons in a funny way. So the top 10 holdings of the Mormon Church are very interesting, but we're going to talk about the first one. The first one is Microsoft, and their top portfolio holding. Oh, but United Health is also one. The guy that just got, taken care of in New York.
Oh.
Yeah. Number 7 is United Health, but number 1 is Bill Gates, and he is now the largest farm owner in America. But guess who number 2 is? Mormons, the Mormon Church. So if you were the Mormon Church and you have all your stock holdings going to Microsoft, would you want them to do well?
Well, yeah, obviously.
Do you think that they work together? Probably. I mean, number 1.
Number 1 and number 2 biggest farmland owners. They have, the majority of their money in Microsoft.
That's right.
I'm sure they have a hand in the keeping the stock prices high and perhaps
and making sure things are good, right? You would have lunch and talk to Gates or whatever. But also, the Nazis, like I said, were very involved with something, and this is a declassified FOIA doc that I do need to add to this presentation. And there is a declassified FOIA doc stating that Gay, we'll talk about Gay a different day when we talk about the Mormon Mafia, but Gay his name is Gay, G-A-Y, and he was integral in the Mormon Mafia. Although he was just an errand boy, he was one of the top people for Howard Hughes, and he became very important. He actually became head over most of his companies, and he took over Howard Hughes Medical, which, funny enough, does CRISPR technology. Haha. You were right on that one. And that was where the bulk of his fortune went. People often ask me, well, where did Howard Hughes's fortune go? Because there was all this controversy when he died. No, they're not wrong. It took 30 years to settle this will. And most of it went to Howard Hughes Medical Company. Well, funny
Wow.
enough, there was a will that popped up for the Mormons, and actually Gay decided, maybe I don't want that to be real. So he said it wasn't real. And it was kind of funny because a lot of people thought, well, he should have like testified that that was for the Mormons because that really would have helped them. But the thing is, he was better off being over the medical center and with the power that he had there than he was with his own church. So that's what he testified of, that he didn't know if it was real or not. And he got to keep his cushy position. And his money is, to this day, he has multiple people, including one of the Real Housewives of Utah, as his daughter-in-law. It's all intertwined. And, he has a ton of money to this day. I mean, they've passed away and handed it down and down and down. But also, we've got Elon Musk, the Mormons, one of their top 10 holdings is Tesla. And Elon Musk's number one guy that handles his finances, much like Howard Hughes, is not qualified for this job. Why does he have it? I don't know. Where did they meet? At somewhere called the Boring Company. They dig holes together. How interesting. That's what Joseph Smith was doing when he found those plates. But anyways, he is his top money man. And as his top money man, he is a Mormon. His name is Jared Birchall. And Jared Birchall is to Elon Musk of what Gay was to Howard Hughes. And why do I bring this up? Well, IBM gets intertwined in this, and it's very strange. IBM was the one that actually made the coded prisoner cards for the classification of people to be extincted or non-extincted during the war. Okay? They made a machine.
They were very much involved. Yeah.
Yes, they made this machine that helped and everything to code this. And the Mormons were salivating over this technology, okay? They wanted to have their stuff all critically organized just like it is today. And so what did they do? They started a company that Howard Hughes didn't even know about underneath Howard Hughes's name called Hughes Co. And it was actually pissed him off so bad that he was like, shut it down. This is a quote from Howard Hughes. That is just Gay's way to put all of this into the Mormon church, like all of their genealogical stuff into the Mormon church. Okay, so Howard Hughes knew that this was an issue back then. Now we've got a FOIA doc that we know the Mormons actually went to the CIA and FBI to say, I want this information, and they got it. Okay, they got a hold of these cards. Now, IBM is interesting, and why does it come up, and where does Gates fit in? Well, Bill Gates' mother was on the board of IBM. And so people miss his mom all the time. The eugenics that his father was involved in is so important, but let alone the fact that his mother was helping basically with some of this information, right? And why do the Mormons have such a close relationship with the Gates when they really don't align in ideology, right? Like they really don't.
But that doesn't matter if, one party makes the other party
their pockets are
of
lined.
money.
Yep. Those pockets are lined.
Hey, you make me a lot of money. I make you a lot of money.
Do you know who you can look up, the Mormon Church had a real fit over this. They had a problem called the Ensign Peak scandal, and that's because they're a 501c3 and they are to put their taxes out for everyone to see. Yeah. And they didn't do this for a long time until the Ensign Peak scandal. Well, when the Ensign Peak scandal happened, they had to start doing that. So I got on, and you can go on as well, into the IRS docs. Every quarterly, they have to file their business that's a 501c3. So they have to file their holdings. Let me tell you guys, I got to include it. I think I sent it to my husband, but it's straight from like the IRS. They own, I would say, a huge percentage of labs in this area. Not just in Utah, I mean America. And funny enough, they do all this genealogy stuff. Funny enough, it all goes back to they've been trying to get their hands in this for a long time. And what else do they own? Well, they don't own it, but they are the progenitors of Ancestry.com as far as this. They were the first ones to make a company, and it was called FamilySearch.org, and it's still out there to this day. I can get on there and look back at all my family members, clear back to the Bourbons, unfortunately for me. Yeah. But long story short, you can get on there and see how far back your family is. Most likely you are in that system because the Mormons have made it so intricate that most people upload their stuff to this system. And this got really big in the 2000s. My grandma actually got called to be a missionary for genealogy. And all she did all day was be on a keyboard typing in information on genealogy. That was all she did all day long, her and a lot of other people for free. And you better believe that some of these records that they have are probably, well, they're worth building Fort Knox in the side of a mountain. I know that much. So we know that FamilySearch.org pours all their information into Ancestry.com. Does the Mormon Church own it? No. But do they get all their information from there? Yes. It's like borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor. Are your cookies then the neighbors because you took their sugar? No. But they still have it, right? They could still claim a piece of that sugar that made it. Yeah. So it's their sugar that makes it. And so to make it possible, they have coded and completely put in all of those records that I show you. And they do some sketchy things with them, including baptisms for the dead, including for Hitler and Frank and all the Jews that died in the Holocaust, which is disgusting because those people died for what they believed in. And there's proof. The dead for the dead. Yeah, they baptize people posthumous.
That
we'll talk about that on occultic stuff. But yes, because
please,
they're necromancers, I'm sure, but I can't prove that, right? Why? So they can save everyone. That's what they say. They say that everybody's waiting up in heaven in this little room, waiting for you to baptize them as a 12-year-old child. And, you know, they did this for, like I said, Hitler and everyone.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm sure that is... people actually believe this. People actually buy this.
I believe this. I did those baptisms many a times. And it's because when you grow up in a cult and it's all you know, and then they tell you, don't look otherwise, and you live in a state that is full of people that believe just like you do, now I'm the crazy one because I don't believe it. Right?
Yeah, so you were in that bubble, and that bubble was all you know. That bubble was all you saw. All you saw were people doing the exact same thing. So that was the normal. That was the standard for you. And like, why would you question the normal? Why would you question the standard if you don't even know there is something else?
Right. And it's funny that we know what we know about Bill Gates, because how many problems has he had in third world countries with his vaccines?
Quite a few. I know.
Do you think he could go to India and walk the streets today? I don't think he could.
Not for long. Not for very long. And that is assuming
they chased him. Yes.
I mean, he'll probably go with a private jet. But even I think that is
they hate him.
If they even allow him to land his private jet, and they
I
don't
think
just
he
fucking
can
shoot at his jet.
Yeah, I don't think he can go there anymore because of all of the problems he's done with all of his vaccinations, right? From the 70s to the 80s, he really was in with Kenya and working on that. Then India with the polio vaccine from 2007 to 2017. We've got the Quaker Oats scandal that's on board for helping make sure people don't, do what they should do inside their bodies naturally. We've got Tuskegee from 1932 to 1972. And if you ever saw Gates's wife talk about the 2020 cure for the Black people, you would have ran screaming if you had a half of a brain, because she literally said, we should, like this, like I'm going to do the face. We should give this to the Black people first because they deserve it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is terrifying. She is terrifying in that little spiel. And I think she was trying to be helpful to like make people trust her, but that did not work.
I'll put on a nice face and a big smile.
He looked crazy.
The believe me look.
Yeah, she looked so almost beyond herself happy that they were going to get it first because they deserved it. And I'm like, I didn't touch any of it with a 10-foot pole because I, like you, even though I'm a nurse, and believe me, this was not an easy time in my life because
I bet.
they didn't like that. And I almost lost my job. If I didn't have asthma, I would have lost my job because I said it's contraindicated, and my doctor was like, she might really die,
Yeah.
But I tried to spread the word. Like the research isn't adding up. You're not looking at the documents. Go look at the JAMA studies. Like I was trying to help people, and they just thought I was crazy,
Well, yeah, because you were going against the norm. You were going against
Yeah. I
government
used my brain,
advice.
and read some lab reports. Like,
how dare
what?
you?
I
How
know.
dare you not just believe what you're told?
But my mom got
Daddy
him,
government knows best.
and she's had a lot of problems. And I'll tell you guys, like, you can say it was something else, but she herself says that she recognized that it happened right after she got it.
Studies
And now she
are
has,
now studies
Parkinson's
are
type
now
syndrome.
coming out that proving the conspiracy theorists right.
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
now the studies are coming out like 5 years after, and a lot of people got like exemptions, and I believe that at least from Pfizer, I believe. I'm not sure here in Europe, but I know that in the States, like the documents can't be made public for another
Oh,
70 years.
They'll stall it. Yeah. And that's going to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
just like the
70
JFK
years,
files.
and then,
Yeah.
70 years down the line, they'll find some other excuse and prolong it for, in another indefinite
Yes.
periods of
So
time.
what do they know that we don't know? And who are the population that they go after, right? They're going after people that are a certain creed and color. They're going after people. I mean, I saw this shot affect people differently with your color, literally. I
Yeah.
saw this in the Latin community kill people. And I swear to you, I did. Like, I can't prove that, but my friend, not only her mom died of it, but her husband died of it right as soon as they got the vaccine. So
Wow.
I'm just saying, and one was super young with no other issues. Like he didn't have predisposing problems like the mom, like maybe, but in one family. And this happened at another time. And if people will be wise and listen to me, this happened under Fauci once before. And if you want to study the AIDS pandemic and find out who got the AIDS, right, and why it's such not a big deal anymore, right? Why is that? Yeah, it's not because of PrEP. It's not because of all these things. It's because they stopped giving it to people. Literally. And as a nurse,
I
that was
heard
terrifying.
about that. Like, didn't he visit like those particular saunas as well, where
Yep,
most of the men who like men go to?
Yep.
And I'm sure all of that was for research purposes. Little pleasure, perhaps.
Yeah,
little.
exactly. Well, and here's the thing, like maybe they just want a certain type of person to live. And maybe they've already messed with our genetics, right? We don't know in America
do.
where we came from. We
they-
don't know, like, why do Americans have way more health problems than other people? Not just the food. Like, it can't be only that, because some people you could feed them garbage 24/7 and they do well. But sometimes, like people like my husband,
I hate those people.
yeah, and he can eat anything he wants and he's great. Like, and I can't, but my levels are good and his levels are bad, even though he looks like he's this big weightlifter, but I'm not any of those. I mean, I do, exercise, but I'm not like he is, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Like, why are there certain people that seem to have it better than others, genetically speaking, too, like to cholesterol, to diseases, to whatever? Like, even, if you have had a test, which I have, because I wasn't a conspiracy theorist always, and I did a 23andMe, why did they have to mark in there that I had a Olympic muscular build? Like, my muscles were, and my husband was ticked at this one because he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not even Viking. He's like half a Viking, And I'm like, no, I'm Welsh and I'm royal. I'm very royal blood. Like, my bloodline is very royal. And I'm like, I don't know. But yet my blood stuff is way better than his.
I think
It's
Welsh.
weird.
There is little information about the Welsh. They were, are still very much unto themselves.
Yes.
one of
And English, a lot of English. for
one
me.
of few British countries actually, or maybe the only one of which the least is known.
Right.
But from what I know, what I remember, I look into the history of Europe a lot. Of course, they're my people. Literally, I am
Right.
Dutch, so it's like, what is it like? I went to the UK a few years back. It's hour and a half by plane. It's
Oh, that's
just
not bad.
we're there. But they are not known for being particularly big and muscular.
Mhm.
And like, even if they are, that is probably a lot of Norse Germanic influence.
Yes, I have Germanic.
'Cause,
Yep. I have Germanic and Welsh, and then like these other little random, like a little French. But the thing is, that's weird to me is maybe they designed these things to be okay with certain people and not okay with others. Like my mother that got very sick,
Mhm.
and granted, I didn't take any of their cures, so we can't do a comparison. I don't have what she has. She has Iberian Peninsula. That's a really strange one if you know
Oh.
anything about that. Yeah, and my grandpa was from the Iberian Peninsula, which they say are like the Atlantis people,
The
and they were
Iberian
darker.
Peninsula, is that like, are we then like also kinda like close or crossing into Basque territory?
Right, but they're the brown side. And so what I'm saying is I'm super white and my parents are not. Like I have green eyes and very light hair, like probably your natural color. I'm assuming you were a towhead when you were little, like a little blonde kid maybe.
Yeah,
Same.
like
And
when
as I got
when
older, it got darker.
yeah,
I'm very
same.
much like you with the green eyes, and I'm super white, like the blue blood, like you can see my veins like through my skin.
Yeah,
all these
you
weird
have a
things.
very, very European, very northern European complexion. Yeah.
And so, but my mom looks tan all year. My mom's brown with brown eyes and brown skin. And so was my dad.
Definitely more Mediterranean.
Right. Yep. And it's weird because like maybe they are programming things. And I'm not just talking about in shots. I'm talking about if they can do things that they can do with CRISPR, what are they doing to our food?
I mean, I know Monsanto really loves to play around with it, and they merged with
They
Bayer,
did.
who
Bayer,
is
yes.
it is I believe a German company, and they sell a lot of medical products, over the
Yes.
counter medical
Mhm.
products. I know, like I have several tattoos, and the tattoo cream that is recommended most
Right,
is Bepanthen, which is a product of Bayer. But
Don't you find that
a-
super interesting? Like that maybe there's a coating, like not coating, but a coated coating.
well, I mean, if you just look at their logo, it's it's the circle.
It's very
the cross,
interesting.
the cross
Yes,
in the
yes.
circle.
Yes.
There's a lot of symbolism to be found in that.
Many say that the Nazis did not lose the war. Germany did, but not the Nazis, right? The Nazis came
no,
here.
because
Yeah.
you took them.
Yes, we took them here to our aerospace program. And mark my words, people, I have a whole presentation on JFK. It's going to go back to the aerospace program and aliens and a seance and some weird stuff. But it
Of
goes
course.
back to a certain families for that. And I'm telling you guys, like, it's weird because, like, one more weird fact I find, all these weird facts, Von Braun made a movie that was only released for Mormons, okay? It's their temple movie. And the temple movie, if you're a Mormon, you know what that is. It's teaching us all our secret handshakes and signs and seals that we're going to go over next time and all this weird stuff, okay? But the only person in that movie that wasn't a Mormon was Von Braun. And he showed up for that movie too. And so I'm just like, really? And I got pictures of it. I've got the actual video. Somebody uploaded it to YouTube. It's great. And I mean, is it nefarious in any way? No. But what the hell is going on over here?
It's
you know what I'm
definitely
saying?
exposing the methods.
Exactly. Who's
and-
working with who?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And honestly, I cannot blame the Nazi scientists for, crossing over. I mean, if you can beat them,
What are you
join
going to
them.
do?
It's
What are you
it's
going to
the
do?
age it's the
It was
age old
death
story.
or that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you a new identity, we'll give you, a cushy government job, and we'll turn a blind eye to everything that's happened as long
Mhm.
as you
Mhm.
help us. Now,
Exactly.
if I was a Nazi scientist back then,
I would do it.
with
Yeah. What are you going
with
to
their
do?
morals,
Yeah.
hell yeah. A cushy job, new identity, American government, whole new country. They used to be the enemy, now they're our friends.
Mm-hmm.
That or death. So
I mean, it's kind of an easy choice. Yeah.
when do I start? Where do I sign?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want me to do? And
Yeah.
eventually you think at first, even if later it goes against your ethics, at first you're going to try anything to save you and your family. And then maybe you'll sacrifice yourself and let the family go forward, right? Who knows? But I
Yeah.
do know this. JFK spoke about the X-File, which is the aliens, and revealing this to Russia to go with Russia to space. And they were going to intricate with Russia. He wanted to tell them so there would never be another Bay of Pigs. Look, there are things flying around that we aren't doing. It's not us, man. We're not
Yeah.
flying over your damn base. It isn't us, And he wanted to do this, and they said it got him killed because 10 days later, he died. And there are pictures with him with von Braun right before this happened. And I will have those on my next one when we talk about, all of this. But it's very interesting where these lines go when they hit genetics, because I do believe the Ubermensch is still something they are trying to create.
I mean, that
And-
also, I'm sure you know the movie, The Boys from Brazil.
Yes, absolutely.
I watched that movie, quite
Based on real
quite
technology.
recently. Yeah,
Yeah.
I watched it quite recently. That is some, genetic engineering, literally.
Mengele had no qualms making
He had no
humans.
shame. If
Mm-mm.
there was a degenerate human being with
It should-
no
yeah, he
morals,
was-
no consciousness, no nothing, he is the poster boy for it.
It is crazy. And to me,
It's just
I look at the forcefulness of the church, right? Being forced into basically accepting other races, right? It was the time, with Martin Luther King and everything, it was not going well for them to keep their feet in the mud and saying, we're not going to do that. You can't make
Yeah.
us. And same with Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes, funny enough, guess what he told them when the whole equal rights, equal work started? He's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't care. What are you going to do to me? He did not care. He did not care. And all of these people that I'm telling you about, when you get back to it, they're related to other really important people, okay? We're talking about the Forbes. We're talking about the DuPonts. We're talking about all of these people that created America, right? They know something we don't know. And I'll tell you guys, when they talk about a brave new world and they talk about creating their destiny and they talk about, yeah, give us your poor, but really who came more first? Even more so, my ancestors were even a part of slavery, which they don't want to talk about because I'm a little bit Irish, right? So here's the
yeah.
thing. They were right alongside the Chinese that never get talked about, the Black people that do get talked about, but there were a lot of slaves here. And I don't think they ever meant for it to be as integrated as it got. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Well, the first one
Yeah.
were the Irish. Yeah.
Yes. And I think they tried to keep it as, and there's a joke in Mormonism, and I'll tell you it, is they used to say that the Native Americans, now Black people are just out because they're just bad. They say, oh, well, back in the day, oh, they got a bad curse on their skin because they chose wrong in heaven when the war of heaven happened and Satan fell with the angels. I'm sure you know that story, probably,
Sure.
maybe.
Yeah.
The
I do.
Black people were called fence sitters, and they sat on the fence and didn't make a decision whether they should stay or go and help or what to do. And so they just sat there. And my grandpa used to call them still fence sitters. And it was really weird for me because we're not like that. We are very integrated in my family and my more recent family, right? But
Yeah.
back before. And he was very still in that weird mindset, though. And you could see the different generations evolving And I don't think the church was overly happy about it, but they used to say, oh, if you Native Americans, they didn't do that. They just had a dark skin for disobeying, and they weren't as dark as the black people, so they can be white again. So they used to say up into the 70s, they would say, look at our brethren that are the Lamanites. They called them Lamanites, which is in the Book of Mormon. Look at how much more white and delightsome they have become since we've been buying their children and interbreeding with their women. Yeah, of course they're going to get whiter. Hello.
Wow.
Yeah. So they used to say, buy up all their children. And this is a true quote from Brigham Young. Buy up all their children and enroll them into their schools, or bring them into your families, and they'll become more white and delightsome. Well, of course they did. They tainted their bloodlines.
Yeah, that is basic genetics.
But here's the thing. I'm telling you guys, I think there was fuckery about with all of this. And I think they did some things purposely. And I think they know it. And I think they're looking for it. They're looking for it since 2020. They're looking. I can't prove that.
Yeah, well, since 2020, it gave them a great excuse. Perhaps they created it to, to have it as an excuse.
To make, you know what it is. It's just like the IBM machine that I was telling you about. That IBM machine that helped categorize all of us. What are they doing now with our DNA? They're categorizing us. They're going to know exactly what your bloodline is, because the Mormons used to have a 1-drop rule. And if you had 1 drop of black in you, you weren't going to be a Mormon. So you weren't going to have all the blessings and all the things. So Brigham Young was pretty brutal. He actually said it was better to drive your sword through your wife if you ever found her in bed with another man that was black, and drive it through both of them to do them a favor to each other. The guy that had 55 wives. So he could care less about his wives, obviously. 55. 55.
Hell no. I'm very happily married to
he had
one.
50. I think he had 50.
Still, that's way too much. Like I have a Spitfire
it's
redhead for a wife.
Oh, we have a redhead for a husband. How funny we are.
Oh, they're delightful. My daughter is a redhead. My ex is a redhead.
My ex is a redhead.
I have a red cat.
Oh my gosh!
Luckily, at least my son is a blonde. He is his father's son. So at least I have.
I only make blondes. Yeah, I make blondes and one brunette girl, and so. But I'm with you. Like it's funny to me that like he would say, okay, polygamy is to go and replenish the earth. Okay. He had 56 wives. He should have had a grip of kids. Okay. I know a polygamist, my friend. Okay. He's my sister's ex-husband. He was married to my sister, and he is Warren Jeffs' nephew. Do you know who Warren Jeffs is? The Warren Jeffs. He's the polygamist leader, prophet, and he's in jail. Okay. And because he was with a lot of underage girls. But his family, he had 3 moms. Yeah, 3 moms. And they had over 30 kids. He can't remember after that. He's like, I don't know. After so many. Yeah, I don't know. And I was like, okay, so with 3 wives, we've got 30 kids. Brigham Young, I just did my fact check on myself, 56 wives, and he only had like 50 something kids. That's a hit it and quit it. What are you doing? What? You didn't replenish nothing. You didn't replenish the earth with your bullshit. You slept with them once and took off. Yeah.
Dude.
And so, yeah, his own theology doesn't come to play.
If you're going to have that many wives, I mean, yeah, like once you already have like 50, 56 kids. Sure, but if it's truly to replenish, you're going to need a little more than that. And you have like 56 to choose from, so...
He only had the 57 children with 16 of his wives.
Oh, so he definitely had some favorites.
And here's the thing. Like, when you're looking at the Mormons, and we'll get into this more, he's running for his life because of polygamy. They're not accepting him in the government. So we're in Mexico, in Utah, back then. But then now it isn't. So back then, he's running for his life, wanting to get away from the government. What's the first thing that he does when he gets here? Hey, do you want us to help you build the railroad for free? The promontory point where the where the two railroads join with the stake is here in
Yeah.
Utah. It's here because this was the place that helped build it for free. And those Mormons were slaves just like anyone else, just so you guys know.
What
And it
the
wasn't
hell?
just that. It was many things. Now, do I think that Joseph Smith's church is Brigham Young's church? No. He was a shrewd businessman, and the other one was an occultic magician, honestly. Honestly, he was a Martinist. Do you know what Martinism is? It's Freemasonry, but they practice Solomonic magic, basically. So
Okay.
that's what he was, I
So
think, in my
dark-
opinion.
Dark
Yeah,
magician,
It was
Freemasons.
dark
Yeah.
magician. Yes, he was actually summoning things, and we'll get into that. But that was not Brigham's church. Brigham was playing ball, and that's when it all started with, hey, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, government. You know,
Oh man.
that's my thoughts on it all.
Governments and privates later on as well.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
eating from both sides.
Yep. And it's an interesting situation. People always say, you know what? I know Mormons and they're always really rich. They always do so well for themselves. Huh. I wonder why they're all in secret
Yeah.
societies in college. Let's get real.
Well, I actually mentioned that on the round table I was on right before I started recording for my own show tonight.
Awesome.
Because wasn't it also the I keep forgetting the name, but like the sparkly vampires.
She wrote that book. Stephanie Myers. You bet your ass she did.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do a
Like-
whole show on that transhumanism and Stephanie Meyer's book because honestly, like it's too good to not. It's so
But
they're all
that is-
sparkly albinos. What? Yeah.
Oh, he was albino. Oh, dude. Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't truly, but they all look
no,
like it.
but he
right?
was
Yeah.
very, very, very
white and
light.
delightsome. White and
Yeah.
delightsome.
Oh shit, that actually makes sense. Like why
Yeah.
he was now considered the pretty boy and the
And
The
why
guy
she
with
shouldn't
the-
go. Don't go with the dirty Native American blood, right?
the guy with the
Oh,
darker
no.
hair and darker
Because he was a Native
complexion.
American. It's very Book of
Oh,
Mormon.
fuck,
It's
now it
very
makes-
Book of Mormon.
Now I
Yep.
can actually see that. But
Yes.
they are terrible movies.
Yeah.
First of all, but it's I have heard that before. I have seen that before. That I mean, like you literally have a community at the very least, like pushing your stuff hardcore.
For sure. For
So
sure.
there
What
is-
they want out. Yeah.
There's
they
no
get out.
way it's gonna flop.
Mm-mm.
Like
Well,
there's just
And honestly, girl, you have to understand the mindset of Mormons. I didn't think it was a terrible movie or book. Want to know why? Because I have Mormon theology in my brain, and I'm like,
okay.
this is this and this and this, and it
but
made
for the
sense
outside
to me.
world
Yes.
who
Mhm.
who don't know that, don't see that. Oh
It's
no,
like an
I can.
invisible college. It really is. It's
Yeah.
like a mystical order, and I'll tell you guys, like. I know that one is on, I don't know if I uploaded it to my Spotify, but I definitely uploaded it on my YouTube on
Mhm.
the I think I called it like transhumanism or something about the Stephanie Meyer stuff. And also 112 on my Spotify is the Mormon Reich. And you guys have got to see it because you won't believe me until you see it. Like and I always bring a slideshow because I know how they are. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
no, that's not real, you know? But like you said, they're going to make those people that need to be made like Bain and Company and the Boring Company, and they're attaching themselves to millionaires and billionaires. And, they're like little leeches, to be honest. I
And
mean,
it's even like it's quite relevant nowadays, of course, a whole side of TikTok, like with
Yes.
the
Mormon
what is it?
wives.
Yeah,
the
the Mormon
secret
wives,
lives.
the
You wanna know why?
the
The
sister
secret-
wives and all
The
of that.
secret lives of Mormon wives are actually Mormon. The Mormons that I mentioned to you from the top, like some of the top level Mormons, that is their daughters, and that is why. The Real Housewives
course.
of Utah, that is a gay, and that is why she's very famous. When I went and looked up all their last names, I'm like, totally makes sense. Totally got it. Yep,
Yeah.
got it.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's why they portray that
Yeah.
idyllic life. They're young and pretty, and their
They
husbands
do.
are
We all look kind of
these
similar. Yeah.
handsome guys, and they
we,
live in these
we all
huge
do look
fucking
sort of
mansions.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
absolutely. It's
it's
definitely
weird.
giving cultish vibes.
Well, and
Uh,
it's so planned. It's so planned that they are
course.
keeping that money right where it needs to be and making it famous, because even bad press is still good press, right? Like
Yeah.
your bad press is still good press, because then what are people going to do? What's a Mormon? Oh, what's this Mormon thing about? Blah, blah, blah. And they're going to look it
Yeah.
up, and then they're going to see some other
Then
stuff.
they'll find that.
So-
They'll find you. They'll find everything else. Yeah.
So strange. It's really hot
As-
in the news and stuff right now, because that new show Primeval. Did you see that? Primeval. It's all
Not
about the
yet.
Mormons. It just came out. It's on Netflix, I think. And they're mad about it. They're saying they're mad about it because Brigham Young's an asshole in it. Well, Brigham Young was an asshole. I just told you he had 55 wives and only 16 had kids, and he just was. He was a shrewd businessman. And it's not a wonder why there's beehives all over in our state. We are the beehive state. Did you know that? We are the beehive state. What does
Wow.
that symbolize in magic? Like, come on,
Yeah.
that's a whole episode,
And even
And-
as simple as the hive mind.
Yes, the hive mind. And then we've got Saturn cubes all over here. Like, they are practicing something at the top level. And I can't explain this to people enough, because they say the same thing every time. I know a Mormon, and they're the nicest person I've ever met. Cool.
I'm sure
Me
they are.
too. My grandma was a Mormon, and she didn't know shit about any of this, because they're not going to tell her, because she's not at the top.
That's
They're
the
not-
same thing who say like, oh, but my uncle was a Mason and he never did that
Right.
shit. My
Yeah.
mother works for the government. She's never done any of those things. No,
Right.
I'm sure they haven't. And, of course, like 99%
Are they
of
billionaires? Yeah. Are they millionaires?
No, unfortunately
Right?
not. I'd be living a lot nicer if
That's
if
why.
if
That's
they
why,
were.
because they pick and choose the people that they let in the club. It is a club just like any other. And
It's one big club and you're not in it.
That's right. And the other piece I'll leave it on is, Skull and Bones with Yale, they have never set up another society. Now, there might be other factions, but Yale didn't actually go make that faction of Skull and Bones, but they did here in Utah.
Yeah.
You bet your ass they did. They came here. Yale sanctioned and sent their people here to set up their own Skull and Bones at the University of Utah.
Oh, then you're gonna love this one. My hometown, town I was born and grew up in, Leiden, which actually was the town from where the Pilgrims left to the States.
wow.
That was their last. That's why we still have the Pilgrim Museum, because it was from Leiden that they got
Wow.
on the boat. And of course, we have a student society like that connected to Leiden University, which is the oldest university in the country, 450 plus years old.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm actually quite thankful that Leiden University is a thing. It's where my parents met each other.
Mhm.
So I guess you could say if it wasn't for Leiden University, I wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be
or
here.
at least, the me that is sitting here right now.
Right.
But it's kind of a well, first of all, it's a boys' club, of course.
Yes.
And they're all like sons of the like they are called the future captains of industry. They're bankers'
course.
sons. They are the kids of the CEOs of like those multi-billion-dollar companies. And you can't just apply for a membership there. You have to know somebody
You have
there.
to be
and,
a bloodline.
it has
or
to be
something.
family. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it can be like like your cousin twice removed or something.
No.
Like the daughter of my mother's cousin. That's too far away. It has to be
Right. It has to be
direct link. Father, mother, uncle, aunt. Just
Something.
direct link. And the society is called Minerva.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And
You
I
have no
fucking-
idea.
I fucking
Minerva-
hate those people.
Minerva is a big one for me, and I'll have to tell you my Minerva story a different day, but that deity has been a huge issue in my life. We'll say that.
And of course, their logo is the owl.
Of
Minerva's
course.
owl.
And just so you know, the two things. Number one, the Dutch were such an integral part of Mormonism because this came out of Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania Dutch, yeah,
Yes.
it's a thing. I
And
know.
the Book of Mormon, the first language it was translated into other than English was Dutch, because we had so many Dutch members, and this is back in the day. And
Yeah.
number two, I told you that Yale came out here at the University of Utah and made Skull and Bones, but instead of Scroll and Key, you want to guess what their name is for their little secret
Lock
society?
and key.
Owl and Key. Owl.
Christ, of course.
And Minerva, I do say this, and I will tell you this, and this is kind of part of my Mormon podcast, but I believe at the top level, at the very top level, and I'm talking about there is the 12, there's the quorum of the 12, and then there's the apostle and his first and second counselor, just like a godhead, okay?
Yeah.
And they believe they're going to be God. Remember this.
Of course. Why
right?
wouldn't you?
And there is an actual faction inside the Quorum of the 12 that runs all the PR and press and everything that is secret. And it's a secret society inside an already very secret society, right? But
Yeah.
when we talk about this, when we talk about all these things, I want you to remember, why would we do baptisms for the dead? Why would we do ordinances for the dead? Everything that happens in the temple, except for the first time you go, is all about dead people. And why is necromancy a thing? Well, let me answer that for people that don't know. Necromancy is a loosh gather. Necromancy is performed so that you can gather knowledge about things, about wealth, about all this stuff. That's why you would do it. And what do we call our prophet in the Mormon church? The prophet, seer, and revelator. Well, where the hell do you think he got all that information from? And there's a spire on top of every temple. They
Of
are
course there
stealing
is.
your loosh. They are they are harnessing you like cattle. They are harnessing your energy. And I believe Minerva is one of those things. They harness it too, but not just her, right? Like there's a whole story with that, with Mother in Heaven and everything. It gets weird.
We'll get into that some other time.
Wow,
Otherwise, we're going
that's
to be here
wild.
for another
Love it.
3 hours.
Yeah, we better not. But
yeah,
I found that would maybe be something interesting to you.
Yeah,
for you to
no,
study
it is.
up on.
It is quite typical. The Dutch, for as small a nation as we are at the moment at. And then it's like including immigrants and all of that, the documented ones at least. 18 million, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
quite small if you look on the
so wild,
the
but the
larger
influence,
larger
yeah.
scale. But we have had a major impact on history. It is
You better
the
believe.
Dutch East India Company, the Verenigde
Yes.
Oost-Indische Compagnie,
Yes.
who was the first multinational, and they were more powerful than whatever king or queen, there was, because they had the money. They had a
Yes.
private army, and they could do whatever the hell they want.
Same with the
Oh,
Mormons.
this
Yep.
king wants to shut us up. Give him
They
a bag
learned.
of money and tell him to fuck off.
Tell him to go away. Yep. Exactly the same playbook. And that's interesting to me. And for more ways than one, because like Joseph Smith's family lost most of their fortune on a ginseng trade. How funny. Anyway, it's all wrapped into one. And I do think they took some lessons from the Dutch brothers that they knew, because I'll tell you,
Probably.
they've made their own army, and they oftentimes give people bags of money to tell them to shut the hell up. So
Well, I mean, that's definitely one thing, us Dutch are good at, or just, the rich in general, just,
Yes.
throw a bunch of money to it.
fix the
and,
problem. Yep.
yeah, no, exactly. Just
Oh,
pay him
boy.
off. pay the problem
what a
away.
episode. This went all kinds of ways, and I'm so glad.
Oh, yeah.
It was fun. This was fun.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. My wife's actually calling me.
No problem.
So it's
We're good.
I
We'll
have to
wrap
go.
this up. Yes,
Let me text her real quick.
you're good. For those of you that don't know me, I am Heidi Luv of The Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. Catch me on Patreon for extra shows twice a month. For $5, I do murders, Mormons, and mayhem, all about the naughtiness of the Mormon church that I don't do on my main channel. So I do like Israel Keys, Ted Bundy. They were both Mormons, just so you guys know that. And so, yeah. So Spotify is twice a week drops. YouTube is like once-ish a week drops because they like to ding me. And I kind of got tired of it.
I totally get that. YouTube
Yes.
is a bitch when it comes to that.
I say the wrong thing every time. I don't know. And then I'm
Well,
like,
no,
what did
you,
I say?
you say the right things, but YouTube says that you're saying the wrong things.
Yes,
So if
exactly. And-
YouTube
and
says you're
TikTok,
saying the
yeah.
wrong things, you're saying all the right things.
Exactly. So I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. Will you let people know if they happen to see any clips of this, where to find you as well?
Yeah,
on my
yeah, of
channel.
course. Steinfox, Greyhorn Pagans podcast. I am on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like all the bigger podcasting platforms. I try to upload to Rumble as well, but I don't like that platform as much. It's very hard to get traction on Rumble.
Yes. Yeah. So any of
so-
my people, check him out. Yeah.
Yes, and or if you want to have everything in one place, go to our website www.greyhornpagans.com. Everything is on there, from the podcast to the tribe to merge to like all the other
Awesome.
groups and tribes that we have aligned ourselves with. I try to connect the tribes as well, connect the communities with each other, because in these times, the communities, the tribes, or just even different podcasters who think alike, we have to do it together. We're gonna have to
Absolutely.
save each other. We're gonna have to save ourselves, because the government is not gonna.
They're not your friend. Yeah.
No. The scariest words you can ever hear is "we're from the government and we're here to
We're
help
here
you."
to help you. No. No, we're good. We're good by ourselves. We're all good.
Thanks, but no thanks. We're
Yes.
we're good. We got it sorted. But
We
you
got
look
it.
like
We
you're
got it.
No,
We're good. We're good.
Just go. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Awesome.
Yeah, no, this has
So
been
any of my followers, check out the full thing, not just this episode. Check them out.
yes. Well, thank you very much
Awesome.
for joining me. This really went all over the place, but
It did. It was fun.
all connected to each other. I mean, as we said, it is all one big club.
We're not in it.
As are we. Well, as are we, by the way. Look at all the podcasts and podcasters that we are connected with. Like, we
Yes.
are one big club as
Yes.
well. Just
Right.
little less power, perhaps,
Yep.
but
And
No,
a way
well-
more inclusive. We're way more inclusive. Yeah.
yeah, especially compared to the Mormons.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no withholding heaven from you today. That's just for me.
Yeah, no,
Oh.
for sure. And for my audience, check out Heidi Unfiltered Rise podcast. If you love this, you're gonna love everything that she does. You have material for
Thank you.
just as a guest. Like, you can do 5 different shows. We could have like everything that we talked
Oh,
about
yeah, we
on this
ping-ponged. It
one. We
was
could do
fun.
a separate
Yeah.
show about.
Yeah, of course. Yes, it was so
but-
fun.
Well, that's what you get with good company, and if you're into the same weird
Yes.
stuff.
If you're well versed and well studied, right, you get to go anywhere.
Hell
Yep.
yeah. And I actually, as a Germanic pagan, I like weird because it's the web of weird, which means that
There we
we are
go.
all connected with each other. Science will
love it.
call it quantum entanglement, but they're basically
Whoa.
proving what we have been saying for literally
Yeah.
hundreds of years. are all
Absolutely.
Connected. So yeah, thank you all so much. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And ring the notification bell. I've been hearing from a bunch of people that they don't get notified when I go live or when another episode airs. Probably because I speak very freely, and I speak.
You're probably
about
shadow banned. I am shadow banned.
I speak about all
ridiculous.
the things that you shouldn't talk about, which means that you absolutely should. So yeah, like just do ring that notification bell.
Yes.
It is supposed to help, at the very least. Who knows? And for everything else, like I said, go to our website, www.greyhornpagans.com. Last but not least, a very big thank you to our sponsor, Shop Reclaim Repurpose. The guy behind that is actually from Utah.
That's cool.
Knows a lot of Mormons as well. Of course, he is a very powerful magician in his own right, and he's a good guy. And he sponsors us through his web shop, shopreclaimrepurpose.etsy.com, and in particular their Nefertafel sets, which is Viking chests like our ancestors used to.
Oh, I better not let my husband hear that. He's going to want one. He's half a Viking. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
And all handmade, all natural materials. He does it all himself. It is a one-man show. It is a one-man shop. But his his stuff is top notch. And if you use the code SteinFoxTuffel, TAFL, at checkout, you can get a 10% discount. I do recommend getting it. It's a really cool set, handmade, beautiful, crafted, well crafted. Link is of course in the description box down below as well. Yeah, that is all for now. I need to call back my wife. She totally forgot that I'm doing back-to-back shows again.
No.
It has been a long day. I'm gonna chill. Heidi, thank you so much for coming on, and you are going to come back because we have way too much to talk about.
It was fun. I had a great time.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, everyone. See ya.
This was yet another amazing episode of the Greyhorn Pagans podcast. We thank you all for watching. We thank you all for listening. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you will be notified whenever we upload something new. Support us on Patreon for early access and for everything else that we do with the tribe, for everything else that we do with the podcast. Find us